All right, chapter 20: Trend Creation, the Power of Persuasion. We're not going to be able to operate our spaceship earthly success for now for much longer unless we see it as a whole spaceship or a fate as common. It has to be everybody or nobody. Buckminster Fuller. So far, we've dealt mostly with the individual change, with the people that can grow, with the becoming empowered, but one of the unmistakable with the aspect of the modern world is the amount of change that happens on a massive level. The idea of a global village has long lasting, since the cliche is still true with now. Never before in the history of the world has there been so many powerful mechanisms for massive lasting group persuasion that can mean more people buying cokes, wearing Levi jeans, listening to the rock and roll bands, and means of the massive positive shift of attitudes surrounding the world. It all depends on who's doing the persuading and why. In this chapter, we're going to look at the changes that happen on a massive scale, so they happen, and examine what they mean. Then we're going to look at how you can become a persuader and what you can do with their abilities. We think of the world today as being a wish-wash stimuli, but there's not what really differentiates it from earlier times. An Indian walking through the woods was constantly confronted with sight, sound, smells that could mean the difference between life and death. Between eating and starving, there's no shortage of stimuli in this world. The biggest difference today is the intent reach of the stimuli of the Indian and the forest had to interpret the meaning of the random stimuli. In contrast, our world is in front of us full of stimuli. They're consciously directed to get us to do something. It might be a plea to buy a car with a mandate to vote with a candidate. It might be an appeal to save the starving children, or a pitch to get us much more cakes and cookies. Might be an attempt to make us feel good, or have having something or a message to make us feel bad that we don't have something else. But the main thing with the characters of the modern world are persistent with the persuasion. We're constantly surrounded with the people that mean the technology know how to persuade us to do something, and that persuasion has global reach. The same image has been pounded into and can be pounded into the most of the world's exact instance. In the same instance, let's consider the habit of smoking cigarettes. People of the earlier times could have them plead with the ignorance, but today we have the cigarettes are harmful to our health. They contribute with everything with the cancer to our heart disease. There's everything in a large amount of powerful public sentiment expressed in the local anti-smoking devices referendum that makes smokers feel that they're doing something bad. People have every reason in the world not to smoke, yet the tobacco company industry continues to profit millions of people continue to smoke cigarettes with more than starting all the time. What is that? Why is that? People may learn to enjoy experience with the smoking, but is it what got them started? That they had to be taught how to use the cigarette as a trigger to create the pleasure. It was not a natural response. What happened when they first smoked? They hated it. They coughed, the gagged, and felt nausea of the body. But this stuff is terrible to get it away from me. In most cases, the physical evidence tells you if something is bad, you would expect to listen. So why didn't people do that with smoking? Why did they all continue smoking until the body gives the final becomes addicted? They do it because they've been reframed as what smoking means. Then the new representation state have been anchored into place. Something with a great deal of the knowledge without persuasion spent millions of dollars to be able to convince public that smoking is something desirable through skillful advertising, clever images, and sounds were used to put positive feeling states. Then those desired states were associated with or linked to the product called cigarettes, and through massive repetition, the idea of the smoking has linked with a various desirable state. There is no inherent value of the social content. Piece of paper wrapped around tiny tobacco leaves but we've persuaded that smoking is sexy, suave, or adult or macho. Want to be with the Marlboro Man? Smoke a cigarette. Want to show that you've come a long way, baby? Smoke a cigarette. You can come a long way, all right. If you've been smoking, you're probably coming a long way closer to the possibility of lung cancer. How crazy is what in the world does putting carcinogens into your lungs have to do with any desirable shape of the appetizers of mass scale? Exactly what they talked about in this book. With the put the image of the put into the respective of the elevated state with them, peak of the experience, the anchor of the you with the message. Then they repeat it in television and magazine with the radio set and radio anchor that gets constantly reinforced and triggered. What does Coke pay Bill Cosby or Pepsi pay Michael Jackson to sell products? Why do politicians wrap themselves in flag? What a Miller Brew the American way? Why do we love the hot dogs, baseball, apple pie, Chevrolet? These people and the symbols already have powerful anchors in the culture of the advertising. The simple transferring them we have for these people symbol of their products. They use the wave with the receptive to their product. Why did Ronald Reagan TV campaign ads are anonymous symbols of the bear in the woods. The bear symbolized Russia with a powerful negative anchor of the reinforced image of the Navy, the strong leadership of something Reagan proposed that he would continue to provide. Having seen bears in the woods, he felt that they were cuddly, yet why do this ad affect such ominous way? Because of the setting and the lighting of the words of the music used. You can break down any effective ad with a political campaign file with the file with the precise framework we set up in this book for the first visual auditory stimuli to put you in the state of the promoter's desire, then anchor at your state with a production or action you wish to take. Then this, of course, is done at time and time and again until the nervous system effectively links the state with the product with the desired behavior. If it's good ad, it will use images and sound with the direct effect of all three major representation: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. TV is such a persuasive medium because it can make the best of all three of it. It can give you the pretty pictures, include the catchy song and jingle, and it also can provide the message with emotional punch. Think of the most effective ads done on the soft drink like Coke, or a beer like Miller, or a fast food restaurant like McDonald's. Think of the reach out with a touch someone, ads for the phone company. Well, they all have in the common and strong visual, auditory, and kinesthetic mix that offers a hook for everyone. Of course, there are some ads that are effective in producing opposite image of the break of the state of the starting, and many of them as possible. The anti-smoking ads, however, seeming the one showing the fetus smoking a cigarette in the mother's womb, and the Brooke Shield looking dopely of the cigarettes coming out of their ears. The ads were most effective when they function as pattern interrupters, when they destroy the aroma of the glamour, something else they had to try to create an unhelpful product. In a world full of persuaded, you can be two, or you can be someone who gets persuaded. You can direct your life, or to be directed. This book has been about the persuasion and showing that you develop the personal power that can put you within control, that you can do the persuading. We're the role models for your kid with the powerful force of the work. The people with the power are persuaders. People without power simply act on images commanded, directed in the way. Power today is the ability to communicate, ability to persuade. If you persuade with no legs, you'll persuade someone to carry you. If you have no money, you'll persuade somebody to lend you some. Persuasion may be the ultimate skill of creating change. After all, the persuader world's alone. Who's alone in the world doesn't want to be. You'll find a friend or a lover. If you're persuaded with a good product or sell with you, you'll find someone who'll buy it. You can have an idea of the product can change the world, but without power to persuade, you have nothing. Communication, what you have to offer is, and what is life all about, the most important skill you can develop. Let me give you an example of how powerful technology, how much you can do with one master of the techniques and lyrical linguistic program offers. When I created my first 12-day lyrical linguistic progressional training, I decided to come up with the exercise that would really make people that had learned. So here's what I did with everyone with the course of it together with 11:30 at night. Told them to give their key, their cash, their credit cards, their wallets, everything but the clothes on their backs. I told them I wanted to prove that they succeed, but they didn't need anything of their personal power, with the persuade, with the ability, with the set, with the skill, with the finding, with the finance, fills the people the needs. They didn't need money, status, vehicle, anything else. The cultural teachers, but us do the need to make our lives what we want them. We were meeting in Carefree, Arizona, with the first channel with the flying way to get to Phoenix, but an hour away by a car. I told them to excellent care of themselves, to use their skills, their ride healthy with the Phoenix, find a nice place to stay, eat well, use their persuasion skills, and any other way that seemed effective in empowering both of themselves and for others. The result was amazing. Many of them were able to get bank loans from $100 to $500, simply forcing their personal power and congruency. Remember, they had no identification whatsoever. They were in a city they had never been in before. One woman went to a large department store without identification and got credit cards she used on the spot. Over 120 people who went out, and about 80% were able to get a job. 7 of the people got 3 or more jobs in one day. One woman wanted to work in a zoo. She was told the zoo had 6 months waiting list for the volunteers, but to develop such a rapport, she allowed to come in and work with the animals. She been treated as a sick parrot with the neuro-linguistic program stimulated with the nervous system. The zoo trainer was impressed with the end of the opening of doing a mini seminar on how to use the tools positively effective with the animals. And one guy who loved children always wanted to speak to a large group of them, and they went to school and said, "I'm the speaker of the assembly. When do I start?" And then people said, "What is an assembly?" And he said, "I know the assembly schedule for today. I've come a long way. I can't wait for up to an hour when we've got to get started soon." Now, no one was quite sure who he was, but it seemed so congruent. He decided that he had to be there for the assembly, so they got the kids together and they talked for an hour and a half on how kids could make their lives better. The kids reached their lover, and the teachers, and loved it. Another woman walked with a bookstore, started with an autographing book about a TV evangelist, Terry Cole Whittaker. Didn't look anything with a Terry Cole Whittaker, whose picture was on the cover of the book, modeled with the Terry Cole's walk, and the facial expression laughed was so well that the store manager, after being upset with the stranger's writing in his book, but a double take, said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cole Whittaker, it's an honor to have you here." A couple of the other people asked for the autograph and bought books while she was there, and that day, a number of the resourceful individuals cleared up the people's phobia of the other associated emotional problems. The people that exercise will show the people that need nothing more than their own resourceful behavior to ask people that need to find another way around without usual support systems, even the transportation money, repetition, contacts, credit cards, and so on. And the majority of them had one of the most powerful and enjoyable days of their life. They all made great friends and helped with hundreds of people. In the first chapter, we talked about how many people have the different feelings about power. Some think of it as somehow unseemingly with the means of the undue with the control of the over them others. Let me tell you, in the modern world, persuasion isn't a choice. The ever-present fact of life someone is always doing with the persuading people that are spending millions and millions of dollars to get the message out to the ultimate power and skill that they'll either do with the persuading or someone else does. Difference in our children's behavior may be the difference between who's greater, the persuader, you and I, or the drug pusher. If you want to have control of their life, they want to be most elegant, effective modeling for those who we care about, you've got to learn how to be the persuasive, the advocate, and responsible there for the plenty of the others ready to fill the void. By now you know that the communication skills can mean to you. Now we need to consider the skill that can mean to all of us together. We live in the most remarkable era of the human history, of the time that changed the ones for the decades now takes day, but the voyage of the ones took months can now take the made in hours. Many of the changes are good. We live in a longer, better, comfortable, without more stimulation freedom than ever before. Some of the changes, however, can also be terrifying. For the first time in history, we know we have the ability to destroy the entire planet, either through horrifying explosions or a long, slowly death of the polluting, poisoning of the planet, or ourselves. It's not something most of us want to talk about, but it's something our minds have moved away from, the not toward. But these situations are a fact. The good news with that is, well, with God and human intelligence and pure dumb chance of whatsoever the force combination forces, we believe the fact of where we are today, here created with the terrifiable problems, also created with the means to change them. Believe all the world problems are fact. The eyes also believe source for the much larger by them presenting understanding. Say there's no source of intelligence that we call the God is like saying in the Webster's Dictionary, as a result of an explosion in the print factory, everything came together perfectly in balance. One day I was started with thinking about all the problems of the world, and I got very excited when I noticed the common relationship to all of them all. All human problems are behavior problems. I hope that asking, using precision modeling right now, and you're asking, oh, well, let me put this in this way. If source of the problem is not human behavior, the usually behavior the solution. For example, the crime is not the problem, it's the behavior that created the thing that we call crime, and many times it takes success for the action and the term of them into nouns, as if they were objects, they actually they are processes. As long as we represent the human problem, and if we were things. If they were things, believe in the disempower us by turning them into something in the big of the beyond with the control of the nuclear power of their nuclear waste is not a problem. However, the humans, even the atom, can be the problem if they're not handled effectively. If their country decide with the tool that's not most effective, helpful approach with the energy development consumption, we change our behavior. Nuclear war is not a problem in itself. The way of the human behavior that prevents war with the famine is not a problem in Africa. However, the human behavior is a problem of destroying each other's land, but it does not support the creation of a large food supply. If food shipped into the other humans all over the world, rotting with the docks, we cover the humans can't cooperate with the behavioral problem in the contract with the Israelis that have done okay with the middle of the desert. So if we agree with the useful generalization of the human behavior to solve the human problems, or that the new human behavior can all solve most of the other problems that arise, that we can become quite excited because we all understand the behavior, the result of the states of humans being in and are of the models, how to respond there in the states. We also know the states of the behavior spring with the result of the internal representation. We know the example of the people linked with the process of the smoke from the particular state. They don't smoke every minute of the day, only when they're smoking state. The people don't overeat every minute of the every day, but only when they are in state they have linked to overeating and effective change of the association or linked to respond with effective change of people's behavior. We are now living in an age where technology needs to communicate messages almost entirely world already in place, being used. The technology is media, radio, television, movies, print. Movies and print. The movies of New York and Los Angeles today are seen in Paris and London tomorrow. The Beirut, Mangua, the day after and around the world, and a few days later, if the movies in the book, of the television show, or other forms of the media speak of the internal representation states for the better, they can change the world for better too. We assume that how effective the media can be with its own products, spreading with the culture. Just now, we're just now learning how effectively it can be with the changing of the world for the better. Think of the live ad with the concert, if there were any awesome display with the positive power of the communication and technology. I don't know what it is there. For a means of changing massive numbers of the internal representation of the massive numbers of the people of the states, of the massive number of the people's behaviors available to the U.S. now, by effectively using the understanding of the trigger of the human behavior, the presenting the technology for the communicating with the new representation to the masses, we can change the future of our world. The documentary film Scared Straight is a great example of how to change the people's internal representation, thereby changing the behavior of the resourceful of the media. It's a documentary program with kids that are produced with the destructive, delinquent behavior that are brought into prison with the eliminate volunteer with the pursuit of the change of the kids' internal representation of the crime and the imprisonment that really mean. Kids were interviewed in advance, but most were really tough and said that going to prison wouldn't be a very big deal. Their internal representation states were effectively changed with the mass murder that began to tell them in life in prison was really like, with relating the detail of the intensity that would change anyone's physiology. Scared Straight is the most viewing follow-up of the program, found with an incredible effect with the changing of the behaviors of the kids. The television was able to carry with the same experience with the huge numbers of the kids and adults, simultaneously changing many people's thoughts and behaviors. We change with the massive numbers of the human behavior if we make effect with the representation and appeal with the people in all primary representational systems. If we frame things the way we appeal with the major meta programs, we change with the behavior of the masses, we change with the course of the history. For example, who was feeling much young man with an American when asked, how would you feel with going over the fight during the World War I? Pretty positive, wasn't it? Why? With the representation of the most young people that have been about the war were created by songs over there with the Uncle Sam popular everywhere. But I want to tell you, the young man in World War I probably pictured himself with the shape of the democracy, free of the people everywhere. Those kind of external stimuli represented in a way that put him in a positive state with the desire to go and fight with the volunteer. By contrast, what's happening with the Vietnam hit him. What was the feeling most young men are going about fighting over there or that war quite different? It wasn't. Why? Because of the different set of the external stimuli offered the huge number of the individual every night through new technology called the evening news. It changed the internal representation on a daily basis. People began to represent war with something quite different from what it had been. It was no longer over there. Now it's over the living room with a diner table that's watched with the vivid detail, but it's not with a big parade with the rescuing democracy rather than watching someone, 18-year-old kid just like you, your own, on your neighborhood getting a face blown off the dying of the faraway jungle. As a result, the more and more people developed new internal representation of what war meant constantly. Their behavior changed. I'm not saying the was bad or good. I'm simply pointing out the behavior of the internal representations were changed. So was the behavior the media created the vehicle for that change. Our feelings of behavior that even now have changed somewhat in a way that I haven't noticed before. For example, how do you feel with the extraterrestrial? Think about the movie E.T. with the Starman, or Cocoon, or Close Encounters with the Third Kind. When you would think of the alien with the horrible goonie monsters, you would come with the eating our face off, swallow your home, spit on your mother. You know, think of the beings of the hive of the boys called the bride bikes with the children until they have to go home, and the guys who loan the grandpa with the swimming pool with the cool off on hot days. If you were an alien who wanted to respond to you in a positive way, would you want them to meet you after they saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers or after they watched the Steven Spielberg movies? If I were an alien, before I came to the planet like this, I'd get someone to make lots of movies about what a great guy I am, and so people would greatly meet enthusiastic with open arms. I guess myself with a great PR agent with a chain with a massive internal representation of who I am and what I'm like. Maybe Steven Spielberg is from a different planet from after all. How does a movie like Rambo make people feel about war? It's mass killing. Napalm seem like great, merry, furious fun, doesn't it? Does it make us more or less receptive to the idea of fighting war? Obviously, one movie would have the difficulty changing with the behavior of the country. It's almost important to know that Sylvester Stallone is not trying to promote killing. People inclined quite the contrary. His movies are always about overcoming the great limitation through hard work with the discipline. They over the mile with the possibility, in spite of the great odds, are the important for us to observe the effect of the mass cult, the impact consistently. It's important to us to be conscious of what we are placing in our minds to make sure that they're supporting our desired outcomes. What would happen if we jammed the entire world internal representation of war? What would the power of the technology could have of the mass number that individuals fight? Could it be the effect of the bridge value of the difference for the representing the unity of all of the people that if this technology exists? I believe it does. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that it's easy, that all we have to do is take a few films, show them to everyone, and the world will change. When I'm suggesting that its mechanism change the available the tool of the destruction, I'm suggesting that we become the conscious of what we see, with the hear experience, with a consistent basis, and that we pay attention to we're representing the experience with ourselves, with individually, collectively. If we create with the result of the one, with the family, the community, with the country, with the world, we must become much more conscious. We constantly represent the mass scale, but tend to be internalized with the mass number of people. The representation effect of the future behavior, the culture over the world. Thus, if we want to create the world that works, we might want to consistently review the plan and what we can do to create the representation of the empower of the unified global scale. You can live your life in one of two ways. You can be like with the power of those dollars, responding all the trends and messages that you're sent in one way. You can be romanced by war, lured by junk food, captivated by every trend that pours through the tubes, and someone once described every type of the scenes of the arresting human intelligence long enough to get the money from it, and some of us live in the world with a perpetually arrested intelligence. The alternative is to try something more elegant. You can learn from the you of the brain, that you of the behaviors and internal representation that you will make with a better person, with a better world, becoming aware of the being, with the program, manipulate with the determined when you with the behavior of the models, being with the reflect, with the real, with the value, with the why they don't. And when you act with the things that they have, with the real value, as you tune out the ones that don't. We live in the world with the stream of the new trend every month, with the persuade, with the becoming the trend creative, rather than someone who just reacts with the multiple new mesh with the direction where things are going is important when they're happening with the direct cause of the destination, important to discover the direction of the stream. Now wait until you get to the edge of the Niagara Falls, find out whether you're in a small boat with no over the job of the pursuit of the lead, the wave of the map of the terrain, find the maps of the path that lead to the better outcomes. Trends are created individual. For example, the national holiday Thanksgiving was created not by a political officer, but by a woman who had a strong desire to unite with the country. Her name was Sarah Joseph Hale. She succeeded in the task that frustrated others for over 250 years. Many people had false notation. Thanksgiving holiday has been an American tradition since the Pilgrims first gave it thanks in October 1621, and that was not true. But that's not true. 155 years after that, there was no regular unified Thanksgiving celebration held in the colonies. The War of Independence brought forth a victory celebrated with the entire country. The first time the tradition was not held up, but the third Thanksgiving was held after successfully drafting the Constitution. President George Washington proclaimed in 1926, 1789 the day of the national Thanksgiving. However, this too failed, became a recurring event in 1827. All along with the chair came Sarah Joseph Hall, a woman with enough commitment and persistence to make it all happen. The mother of the 5 children driven to support herself and family, became the professional writer in the time of our history, when a few women were known with successful in the profession. As the editor of large-scale ladies magazine, she helped to make it a major national periodic circulation. With 150,000 was done with the editor's royal campaigns, but half of the women's colleges, free black public playgrounds, and day nurseries. She read nursery rhymes. Mary had a little lamb. However, the most important cause of her life was the grave of the permanent national Thanksgiving Day. She used the magazine as a major tool to influence who could institute such the trend of the nation. Almost 36 years she campaigned for the day for this dream by constantly writing the personal letter to the presidents and governors and magazines. She annually published tempting Thanksgiving, the menu features story of the poetry with the focus on Thanksgiving themes, and so she wrote an editorial after editorial in support of the annual Thanksgiving Day. Finally, Civil War provided Hale with the opportunity to express their point with the way with the wood capture of the nation. She wrote, would it not be a great advantage socially and national and religiously to have the day for our American Thanksgiving and positively settled? In October 1863, editorial putting in aside with the ceilings, setting sectional feelings with the locational incentives that might be the area of the single state with the isolated with the territory with the desire to achieve with our time. Would it not be noble the more truly of the American to become the national unity when offered with the God or attributed to joy with the gratitude for the blessing of the year? She wrote a letter to Secretary of State with the William Seward, who then showed with the President Abraham Lincoln, who fell with the concept of the national unity with the precisely right with 4 days later the President issued the proclamation saying with the last Thursday of in November 1863, the National Thanksgiving Day, with the rest of the history of the all because of the woman and persistently persuade the ability to effectively use the existing media. Let it me offer you the two possible models with the effect of the trending with the creation. I must give the positive difference through education and through what I have the positive effect on the future. Must give the next generation the most effective tools available for creating the world they want, and or organization attempts to do this for the United Unlimited Excellence camps. And in these camps, we teach the kids of the specifically tools to run their own brain, to direct their own behavior, and thus their results they create in their life. They learn to develop the levels of the rapport with the people, the background, the model effect with the people, the breakthrough, limitation, reframe, the perception of the possible of them, and the end of the course of the major kids to tell me with the most powerful learning experience they ever have, and one of the most enjoyable, rewarding programs I have had the privilege to conduct. However, I'm just one person, and our associates can reach out to only so many kids that develop the training program to provide the neuro-linguistic program over the optimum form of technology skill with a great step of the direction of affecting the more kids with another large enough scale with a truly creative with the new trend is educated now. We're the first step of the conceptual line with another project that we call the Challenge Foundation. One of the challenges many kids face for the part, particularly those with the disadvantaged area, is that they don't have the access to the powerful, the positive, the role model. With the idea of the Challenge Foundation put together the library interactive video representation featuring the most powerful, positive role model within the cultural contemporary people like the Supreme Court justice and of the business, as well as the powerful figures who no longer live like John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi. These kids get the powerful experience to emulate. You can hear the Martin Luther King Jr. from the teach, but you can hear the King's words. But the only part of the experience you could spend with their 30 minutes they have of the personal tell you, with the philosophy, the belief, the end, what with the 5 minutes have saying, but you can do with something in your life. I would like the kids to be able to develop with not just words, the tonality, physiology of the total presence of the master persuade with many kids study the day of the Constitution, for example. They have no idea to relate with life today. What if we have the video of the chief of the dreams, Justice of the Supreme Court, telling the student that why they dictates every day of his life, upholding the document, how it affects for them today, what at the end of it gave to the young people the challenge could imagine what happened if the massive numbers of kids across the country could have regular, consistent action of the kind of the positive input and challenge such the program could have changed the future and the input about the system, and they invite the letter for the comments. Another example of how the influence of the creative with the plot of the new trend of the workman with the name of Amory Lovins is direct for the breacher of the Rocky Mountain Institute, Snowmass, Colorado. Lovins had involved with the alternative energy project for several years today. Many people believe that the nuclear power is too costly, too effective, too ineffective, too dangerous to be used. Yet anti-nuclear movement has made a little headway because of just that. Anti-nuclear, many people who move toward the solution wonder where the movement is so far with sometimes it's hard to tell, but Lovins has been able to have an enormous success of the energy companies by skillful persuasion rather than mere protesters, instead of attacking nuclear power. The companies Lovins provide alternatives that are more profitable because they don't require huge plants which cost the kind of run over the billions over the budget. Lovins like with the practice we call the Aikido politic with the Aussie with the same principle agreement the frame of the direct behavior in a way with the minimized conflicts, one with the case for the act of the testify with the rate of hearing with the utility playing with the massive and the new nuclear plant construction had begun when the plant had already cost $300 million. Began with the saying that he wasn't even testifying for or against the plant. He said that everyone's the essence for the eligibility within the customer have the utility operated with some official footing. They want to have the example to explain how much money could be saved with the conservation, how much energy would cost the huge expense of the new plant was built. With the conservative, the financial terms he discovered that would mean to the company it was low key representation. There was no effort with the rail against the plant over the nuclear power. After he was through, he got the call for the utilities vice president of the finance for the city, with the official with the talk, with the effect of the plan, with the could have with the company of finance. He said the plan, if the bill could cause the company to the evident disaster for the company stock. Finally, with the official with the Senate, the interviewers wanted the company would be willing to walk away with the plan with taking $300 million law for the Lovins began with the advertorial of the virtual manner with the company would have dug in the heel of the wave that would have satisfied no one. By finding company ground with trying to create with a very viable alternative, they were able to reach an agreement that benefited both sides. With the new trend of the game of the curve with the Lovins work Other electrical companies have now contracted with him with the consultant with the limit of the nuclear dependent with the simultaneously increase the profit and other involved farmers with the San Luis Valley with the Colorado with New Mexico. Farmers traditionally gathered firewood as their main energy source with the land over the fence off of the area. When they had gathered wood, they were very people with a few leaders managed to persuade the farmer the situation and setback for the button and top returning. It was not a setback but an opportunity. They began one of the most successful solar projects in the world. As a result, they gained the sense of the collective power of the goodwill that never had been loved before. Loving cities similar similar case to Osage, Iowa. Osage, Iowa, where the small local utility cooperative decided to not use the power efficiently. Result was push the weatherizing, housing, conserving the fuel to drive successfully with the utility to be able to retire with the debt with the F3 rate. It's cut in 2 years with the customers within town with 3,800 people to save with $1,600 million a year on the fuel costs. New things happened in both the cases. The people were able to benefit with one another, finding win frame with the help of them all. But they were able to develop a new sense of the authority, seeker with the learning with the taking action and versus the desired outcome. Secondly, gains in the goodwill of the community spirit that came with the working together, the taking action, whereas the important with the money with the with the kids with the pod with the 10 they created by a few committed to persuade with it. They're saying with the computer world with the GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, the means of the quality you get out of the system depends entirely what you put into it. Put into the badly full with incomplete information, you get the same kind of the results. Many people in our country, our culture today, give it a little or no consequence with the quality information experience with it being input with the daily. According to the latest statistics, average American watches television 7 hours a day. The U.S. News World Report states with the young adults between 8 grades 9 and 12 will see average of 18,000 murders that will watch 22,000 hours of television, more than twice the time spent with the class during 12 years of school. With the critical will look at what would find into the minds and express with the growth of the nurture of the ability to fully experience and enjoy the things we call life. We work like a computer if the form of the internal representation tells us if the blowing away of the village machine gun is needed. The unhealthy young junk food is what successful people eat, but the representation will govern our behavior. We have more power than no more than ever been before, shaping the inner perception of the governing behavior. There's no guarantee that we'll shape it for the better, but the potential is there. That we should start with them doing something about it. Most important issue that we face with the nation as a planet deal, what kinds of the images and mass representation we produce. Trend creation is the leadership about the real message of the book. You know how to run your brain with the process of information most empowering fashion. You know how to turn down the sound, turn off the brightness of the communication. You know how to resolve the conflicts within your own values. But if you really want to make the difference, you also need to know how to be a leader and how to take with the persuasion skills, make the world a better place with the means of being positive, the more skillful model for your kids, for employees, for your business associates, for your world. You can do this on a level of 1-1 persuasion, and you can do it on a level of brass persuasion. Instead of being influenced by image of the Rambo delirious, blowing away other human beings, you want to dedicate your life to communicating an empowering message of the difference we're making in the world of what you want it to be. Remember, the world is governed by persuaders. Everything you learn is the book. Everything you see around them tells you so externalizing the mass scale of the internal representation of human behavior about the elegant and effective, the positive you can change with the future direction, children, your community, your country, your world. We've had the technology change it right here, and I suggest we make use of it. Alright, the ultimate Ali, the book is about with the truth about the maximum personal power to learn how to be effective, successful in what you try to do with no value, with the help of the dying planet. Everything we talked about in the importance agreement, the frame with the nature of the rapture of the modeling excellence, with the syntax, with the success, all with the rest of the work bait, when it's possible the way of the breed, successfully the other ways, well as ourselves. The ultimate synergy with it comes to the people together, the working part. When you have the technology chain with the people, the perception almost instant in time, you have the power of the way of the better man of us all of the Thomas Wolfe, the one shoulder. There's nothing in the world that we will take with the chips off the one shoulder, with the like of the feeling with the success. There's real, the challenge, excellence, with the skill, with the broad level, the empower with ourselves, with the others, in ways are truly positive in a way that generate massive joy for the communal success. And the time to start using them is now. Chapter 21, Living Excellence, the Human Challenge.